Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Groundpass. Nick, I think this is the closest we've ever started recording after a finals happens.
Probably. I mean, there was that
There
one.
was that one year. There was that one year when we recorded as Jannik Sinner was winning the match
That
against
was what I was
Medvedev.
going with. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was fun because we were both watching the fifth set whilst trying to kind of cover the Australian Open, and both were very distracted. That episode is somewhere in our archives. It's very early in season one.
Yes.
Although that's one of those things that still confuses me is why do we call 2024 season one when we were recording in 2023?
That is true. Was that season 0?
It was the mini series.
Well, exactly. It was like the mini series because we started at the end of 2023. So I would say like that was like sort of like the trial run, the beginning of Groundpass. But anyway, we are here to cover the Davis Cup. What a Davis Cup it has been. We are going to review all of the fun moments, the crazy moments of the Davis Cup, and also at the end, check in on some news that has been happening around tennis and kind of wrap up the year a little bit because we're still going to have a full episode wrapping up the year, but we're going to talk about how we feel in general about the year. And, you know, Nick, what a long year it has been.
It has been long. Players are saying it, we're saying it, and there might be some people who are like, I'm going to miss tennis now. And there is a part of me that's going, what am I going to watch for the next 6 weeks or so? The answer is the F1 for at least 2 of those, because
yes,
we
will be occupied.
Nicely. That's for the other podcast.
That's for the other podcast, the secret podcast that we're not telling anyone about.
It's only for us.
It's just, secret podcast, secret F1 podcast. But yeah, so let us get into it, into this episode. And we will start, Nick, how we always start these episodes right?
We always start with an audience question. And this is the first audience question we've ever had through TikTok. So if you're listening to this, you found us on TikTok, welcome. We might be clipping this and releasing this on TikTok. So saying that, your questions do get answered in some way, shape, or form. And I really, really liked this question, mostly because I like the opportunity to tease you, Anastasia. So this is the Davis Cup episode, in case you haven't seen from the title. And we had a question about the Davis Cup from a viewer on TikTok that was simply, where is the US? Anastasia, where is the US?
This is so unfair because I am so triggered by this question. If people, I'm smiling, I'm laughing. If you know how upset I was when the US did not make it to the Davis Cup finals, you would know that these are actually tears and not smiles and laughs. But where's the US? That is a very good question, Brian Brothers. I'm not blaming them fully. But yes, the US they did not make it to the Davis Cup finals this year. If you go back a few episodes, we talked about their tie that they had against Czechia and Del Rey. So they actually played at home. They played their qualifying match at home in Delray Beach and lost to Czechia, who were playing away. And this happened right after the US Open. And it was really tough. There were some elements of we didn't have our full roster. So Ben Shelton and Tommy Paul were supposed to be on the roster, but they were both injured, so they couldn't play. So we were left with Frances Tiafoe, Taylor Fritz, Rajiv Ram, and Austin Krajicek played doubles together. They were excellent. They won all their matches. But it was very tough because I think Frances Tiafoe wasn't in form. So I wasn't expecting him to win any matches. And Taylor Fritz can't really do it alone. So I have a lot of thoughts about Davis Cup, especially as we get to talk later on in this episode about the dominance of one country so far this Davis Cup. And I think countries and teams have to start thinking outside of the box, because I think what's happening right now is when it comes to Davis Cup qualifying or even the Davis Cup finals, these teams go for their top players. And I think sometimes you might want to just go for your young, hungry players who just want to win for their country and their team, and that might get you over the edge. Why didn't we have an Alex Mickelson or a Lerner Tien in our Davis Cup, team? instead of Francis Tiafoe. All due respect to him, he just has not been in form this whole year. So where was the USA? They were not at the Davis Cup Finals. That's where they were.
Yeah. To be fair, we'll see. We'll see if they'll get back into next year's Davis Cup finals. Like, they're still going to be in the main stage. They're still going to try and qualify for the top eight to compete at the end of the year. And they have a very strong team. As you say, they just underperformed against Czechia. Although, having said that, Czechia are a very, very good team. They have Jakub Menšik and Jiří Lehečka, who are both top 20 players. Menšik won Miami. Lehečka has been one of those guys who's kind of been there or thereabouts all year. I think he's one of the Groundpass players of the year, to be honest. Given like he was unseeded or outside the top 20, he was still making these runs. Like he was in against Alcaraz in the Queen's final this year, so he's there or thereabouts. This is like a nice segue into our main episode talking about Davis Cup and what happened in it. But Czechia pushed Spain. Czechia could have beaten Spain and made the semi-finals and maybe even the final as a result. So they could have. I think we're not necessarily giving Czechia the respect they deserve because they are a very, very strong tennis nation as well. You can put it down to being a bit of a bad draw for the US. Czechia was, in my opinion, one of the 3 or 4 best teams in the draw and will probably be again next year. So I think the US just needs a slightly better draw as well as picking some hungrier players, a bit more informed players, as you're talking about, because those are the kind of players that Davis Cup brings to the fore, as we saw in these finals, which again, we're going to go into what happened there, Anastasia.
Yeah. Let's get right into it. But I think before we do, just to give a little bit of kind of a history of the last few years of the Davis Cup, because, if you're new to tennis and you're just coming into it and you're like, what's the Davis Cup? The Davis Cup has changed a lot from, back in the day where I saw this clip on Instagram, Nick, of when Spain played Argentina in the Davis Cup finals. And it was Rafa Nadal and he was playing and he won the match. So Spain had won away in Argentina. And the reason why that match kind of was on social media recently was because Spain's current team captain, David Ferrer, was talking about it and how that match was inspiration for this team. But the clip they showed was a stadium the size of like a football, like a soccer stadium, and it was filled. I mean, it was like the World Cup. It was like the World Cup was happening and Argentina was playing against the UK, England, and it was like one of the biggest things ever. And you look at what the Davis Cup is now and you're like, how did we go from there to here? Because that's what's happened right now. The Davis Cup is definitely not as popular as it used to be. It had been held in Malaga for the last few years. Spain didn't really take advantage of that home court advantage. And now it has moved to be hosted in Bologna, which is in Italy, which is basically the home of the current just champions and the team that has dominated Davis Cup for the last few years, which we will talk more about later. That's a little bit about the backstory. I think the Davis Cup is going through some sort of some changes to try and maybe attract more higher ranked players, trying to go back to doing the home and away thing that they sort of was the whole essence of Davis Cup, was playing home and away and getting that team spirit vibe going again. But I think it has a long way to go because I don't know about you, Nick, but a lot of my friends who are super casual fans, like I have a tennis group chat with my casual tennis friends, and it was silent during Davis Cup. And it never is. Like even during the regular season, like they'll be talking about like, oh, did you see Taylor Fritz playing here? Or did you do this? Or did you do that? It was silent for Davis Cup.
Yeah. I mean, I have some thoughts about that when you're saying that. I think there's a lot of reasons for it and your specific case. So I know we're talking. Do we want to talk about improvements for Davis Cup now or later in the podcast? Because I think this links to that.
Yeah, we might as well do it now.
Let's do it now. Okay, so my immediate thoughts are it's very similar to. I think we actually answered it with our earlier question, which about where is the US? All of your casual fans in that group chat are American. They are not going to pay attention to the Davis Cup unless the US is in it. I actually think there's probably countries that don't pay attention to the big World Cup, the Football World Cup, if they're not in it, really. I don't think, if I think about the last time England didn't get to the World Cup was 1994. Nobody talks about that World Cup in this country at all. We don't talk about it. But we'll talk about it whenever, we've got home nations in it and we've got a good chance of seeing lots of those. This is not a football podcast. True football, by the way. And I'm English, I have to say that. So, and it's a similar thing here, right? What does the Davis Cup need? It needs just a better TV deal, I think, overall, because it links to my wider point to what we're talking about. The reason why your guys aren't talking about it is the same way as my friends aren't talking about it, because GB wasn't in it. And by the way, nobody's asking where GB is. I'm offended. Like, you not miss us in the Davis Cup, the scrappy underdogs that are trying to desperately win another one, even though we don't necessarily have the top ranked players to do it. Like, we were like, okay, Andy Murray won it for us a few years ago. Still, we've got a load of doubles players who are really, really good, by the way. Just saying.
Yep.
But whenever Britain plays, British matches are always held on posted on the BBC, usually on iPlayer, not necessarily on one of the main channels, but it's basically super accessible. Like, I've got a friend of mine who has a bit more time on his hands now, admittedly, because he has a baby. Whenever Davis Cup or Billie Jean King Cup is on and GB are playing, it's on the BBC. If I wanted to watch the Davis Cup this week, I needed to get Tennis Channel International to watch it. And which now no longer exists internationally. Like, this is something I don't know if I've mentioned to you before, Anastasia, but if those of us who are watching things like United Cup or Davis Cup, Billie Jean King Cup, Tennis Channel International no longer exists as its own platform. You can only now access Tennis Channel content where they have the rights stream abroad through smart TVs or through Amazon Prime as an add-on. So that immediately shuts us out. We're not going to necessarily consume it. What was Davis Cup on? It was probably on Tennis Channel in the US, if I'm correct.
Yeah.
And again, it's only your hardcore fans are going to have Tennis Channel. Whereas for your slams and for everything else, like, I get it with the tours, like your 1000s or whatnot. Like, you want to try tennis and dip your toe in the water by watching those. And it's the same for Davis Cup. But the thing is, if Davis Cup is supposed to be the international competition for tennis, it should be more accessible than the rest of the tour.
Yeah.
And there's other ideas in the mix that would also help with the accessibility and making it a little bit less intense, that would also get people excited for it, which we've talked about before, Anastasia, and I really like your ideas. But I think your base starting point is have a better TV deal to watch it that's accessible to as many people as possible to watch, and they will watch. And the ticket thing, like, okay, we'd probably fill crowds. You could probably fit it better into the calendar. You could pick a different location or whatnot. Like, that's a more logistical issue. But if you want to sort of get eyeballs on this event and hype it up to make people want to go and get tickets one day, put it on TV for people to get access to. Because I guarantee to you, if your group chat had access to Davis Cup matches and were able to watch the absolute thrill rides with Spain, Czechia, or Germany, Argentina that we had, the Belgian run, everything that happened, like the Italy-Spain showdown that was basically discount Sincaraz. That's what you need, is that, like, you can just tune in and watch. And then also the Americans need to play better for the American casual fans to actually also care.
That's true. Yeah. No, that's totally true. No, you're right. You kind of, I think, summed it up in the easiest way possible, that it needs to be accessible. It needs to be something that you can stumble upon and just easily watched, because you are right in the sense that it's harder when your country is not in the Davis Cup to sort of want to even care to pay attention to it or anything like that. But at the same time, just like you said, this was so, like, for the end of the season tennis, we had so much good tennis, like just tennis in general. And I think anyone who is a fan of the sport of tennis would have been a fan of watching just that stuff. But you're right. If you have to sort of get a special add-on just for the Davis Cup, like, that's not feasible. No one's going to be doing that just for the Davis Cup. I think we're lucky here where in the States, for example, if you want to watch tour level events, it's on Tennis Channel. So if you already have Tennis Channel for that, you can watch Davis Cup. But you're right, in terms of discovery, it can be just a little bit more difficult for the casual fan, and I think the last thing I'll say in terms of suggestion, because I think you nailed it really, that's the main thing that could improve Davis Cup. A lot of the players have been talking about making Davis Cup more scarce. If it is the World Cup of tennis, which is what Davis Cup has sort of positioned themselves as being, why not make it as scarce as the World Cup or, for example, the Olympics? The World Cup is not every year. The Olympics is not every year. Why is Davis Cup every single year? So I think a lot of players have sort of come out to say, can Davis Cup be every 2 years or something of that nature, which I think might be a solution to get more higher ranked players playing
Yeah,
Davis Cup.
I think you're right. I think you're spot on there. I think higher ranked players would play it in the same way as they try to play the Olympics when it comes around, because that's not worth points, but it's a lot of prestige. And
Yeah.
I was thinking about this, like, what other sports have a World Cup every year? Even like the first thing I thought of was athletics, which has a World Championships every year where there isn't an Olympics. But the Olympics is the thing that everyone watches when athletics comes around, like,
Yeah.
or at least that's what they most care about, and like that's what they're all kind of working towards. It's kind of seen as the level below Olympics within athletics, or at least to the casual observer of athletics, like I am. That's the first thing I thought of as, oh wait, that kind of happens. Like, there's probably a few other sports that do their World Cups every year, but they aren't as high profile. Tennis has the profile, so why not follow football or rugby or cricket? Although cricket has multiple World Cups a year, but in their various formats. I appreciate the minute I said cricket, all our American listeners turned off. But
They're like, what?
what is this sport? But every sport has it every 4 years. So it's not going to harm tennis to move Davis Cup to that. I get it, it's not traditionally what it is, because Davis Cup has always been every year since 1909 or whenever it was it started. But times change, and the Davis Cup needs to find a new place if it's going to keep its prestige or find it again. And your solution, I think, helps for that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we're just the little podcast that could, but if anyone's listening out there who wants to listen to our suggestions, that's what we think about how we can make the Davis Cup a little bit more accessible to the casual fans, which are the people we usually talk to. So let us jump into this Davis Cup and just how fun it was. I think we should start with maybe not the elephant in the room, but I think coming into this, like maybe earlier on in the season, everyone was thinking, especially when Spain and Italy qualified, everyone was thinking, oh, Sincaraz Davis Cup. And then they just slowly started withdrawing from it. Sinner first kind of said, hey, I've won this already twice before. I'm going to not attend this Davis Cup and I'm going to take a longer off season. And with Carlos, he got all the way to Bologna in a van. He drove all the way there and obviously had to withdraw due to injury. So we didn't have Sinner. We didn't have Alcaraz at this Davis Cup. But we had some great teams and some great matches, and we still ended up with, I have to say, I love what you said. We still ended up with Discount Sincaraz as the final of the event. But before we get into Discount Sincaraz, let's start with the moments of Davis Cup that sort of were everything. And let's start with what you put here first, Nick. Germany and Argentina doubles madness. Because that was some
tennis. Like, whilst your casual group chat may be dead quiet, the tennis fan one that I'm in was going crazy for Davis Cup doubles in that moment, which, by the way, just as a quick segue, Anastasia, you saying the elephant in the room is where is Sincaraz. I thought the elephant in the room was where is the US. Moving on, this match didn't involve the US, it involved Germany and Argentina. I think I've just got fired from this podcast. So Germany and Argentina, which was a really close one. Like, it went to the doubles, but it could not have done. Like, Cerundolo pushed Zverev in their match. The Argentinians could have watched it. I think Echeverry beat Struff in 3, and then Zverev managed to get over the line in 2 tight sets against Cerundolo. So it was nip and tuck. And then you get the doubles in that one, which... Okay, so you have Arafalo and Montani taking on established German doubles heavyweights, Kravitz and Putz, who we've mentioned a few times on this podcast. Like, they're a dangerous team. They've won some big titles. And that doubles match, that tie went to the wire, because the doubles match decides everything in Davis Cup. I'm explaining this for those people who didn't watch, which seems to be pretty much our entire audience by the sound of it. So it went to the deciding set, 10-point tiebreak. It went beyond the 10 points. It went well beyond the 10 points. It got to 14-14 before Kravitz and Puig got the final couple of points they needed to win that tiebreak. But that one could have gone either way. That was just a quarterfinal. I would have that was going to play Spain, and Kravitz and Puig got it for Germany. But this is that was just raw Davis Cup of, this is where doubles really comes alive and people pay attention to because you're playing for your country. And I love these super tight doubles matches where everything is on the line. And yeah, that one really went the distance. That's going to be one of the most exciting doubles matches of the year for sure. And fundamentally, that's what makes Davis Cup such a fun product. Because for all of our criticisms of Davis Cup that we just did, the overall product it produces and the structure that it has is actually quite good. And when you watch it, it's well worth doing. And that match, for me, in amongst others, other reasons there, but that match and that tie was kind of the best of Davis Cup encapsulated.
Yeah. And I think this Davis Cup in particular was just the Davis Cup of tiebreaks, because the next thing that came up, or that I really wanted to talk about, was about Team Belgium. Team Belgium were kind of the feel-good story, I think, of the Davis Cup. Even the way they qualified, I remember we talked about this when we were talking about Rafael and how he was cramping through the qualifying, but still got it over the line. He beat Alex de Minaur in such a fabulous match to qualify, to help Belgium qualify for the Davis Cup. And they come into the finals, and their first match is against Team France. And I think nobody really gave them a shot of winning against, one half of the cousin duo in Rindiknecht, and then also, what's his name that we love, that's so crazy and funny, French player, Corentin Moutet. Yeah, who just, I don't know, do we talk about Corentin Moutet pooping the bed, as they say?
Are we desperately trying not to put the explicit tag on this podcast?
Truly just trying not to have to tick that box on the podcast. But he truly pooped the bed and it's one of those things. If you don't know Corentin Moutet is just a character. I will never forget the Madrid Open. He's playing at night and he asks the umpire for coffee. And the umpire is like, we don't do that. We bring coffee to the court. And so a fan got him coffee. And it was but that's Corentin Moutet. That's just his vibe. He's either contentious with the crowd, or he loves the crowd, or he's just doing something crazy. And in this match against Team Belgium, he played the first match and he tried to, he was winning. He won the first set. They're in the second set, and he plays this shot where it could have just been an easy volley, but he decides to do this crazy trick shot between the legs, and it goes straight into the net. And let's just say that was the beginning and end of the match. It went south from there. Rindiknecht lost his match. And, Belgium came out on top. They had this really great celebration on court. Yeah, their next match was against Italy. And the match that really sort of was the defining match was the one between Zizou Bergs and Flavio Cobolli, where, just like you said with the Germany-Argentina match, the doubles that just was down to the wire, the deciding tie, basically. That's what this match was between Zizou Bergs and, because Matteo Berrettini had already won the first match against Rafael Collignon. So Zizou Bergs had to win to keep Belgium in. And he fought so hard. They got into a third set tiebreak. It went all the way to 17-15. Cobolli had to save 6 match points. And it was so devastating for Zizou Bergs, just having him just in tears on the bench, and then having Cobolli in a Hulk moment ripping his shirt open. It was the definition of what Davis Cup is, and it was such a moment of just seeing the elation of one team and then the sadness of another. And that's sport. You can't all win, but it was definitely a Davis Cup moment for sure.
100%. Again, that's one of the things I love about it. And I think Zizou Bergs in particular was one of the, like, want to narrow it down, like, his contribution to that Belgian team was amazing. Because I think in your quarterfinal summary, I think we were focusing on the reasons why France lost, but we already know how, Collignon is a pretty good player anyway, and like he was always going to be, maybe there was always a potential he was going to be a problem for Mute, but Zizou Bergs really put it all out there this tournament because he beat Rinderknecht, which is not easy right now. He's playing so well, and he was clearly elated by that. And then to go from the elation of taking out one of the favoured teams to the crushing low of narrowly losing to the lead Italian and Caboli, because that could have gone to a doubles, and then who knows, like doubles could go either way. Like, all due respect to the Italian doubles team, who I don't think barely got to play, to be honest. Like, I don't think they even needed the doubles.
They didn't play at all.
They didn't play at all, but they're no Rani Paolini. So the Italians didn't necessarily have that get out of jail free card, and the Belgians weren't bad. So like that could have put the tie up in the air. And even though Bergs got that close, and he probably had match points of his own, right, or in that tie break,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
He got so close. Like, for him to go all out there, I think a lot of people really like Zizou because he's got such a big heart, and the Davis Cup is the home for people with big hearts, and he proved that. So yeah, like for me, I know that there's one player that you're saying is the MVP of Davis Cup, but I think Zizou Bergs is probably his biggest rival. Maybe also Caboli, actually, but
yeah, I mean, this Davis Cup, it was kind of hard to choose. It was kind of hard to choose, but I picked one early on, and I'm sticking with my pick. But talking about big hearts, that brings us to the next moment of this Davis Cup, and that was Team Spain. Team Spain are the team that could. They were, what was it called? I think they were calling it La Davis del Pueblo, something like that. It was the Davis Cup of the people, because that's just how sort of grassroots and just so, simple the team was. They didn't have their number one player in Carlos Alcaraz, the number one player in the world. No one gave them a chance considering their draw, because they had to get through Team Czechia and then Team Germany, who at this Davis Cup had the second highest ranked player, well, the first highest ranked player in Alexander Zverev. And to get to the finals, like, no one gave them a hope in hell. No one gave Jaume Munar, Pablo Carreño Busta, Pedro Martinez, and Marcel Granollers a chance at all to make it. And somehow they did. They made it to the finals, beating Czechia, beating Team Germany. And I have to say, Jaume Munar, this tournament, I mean, I think he sort of took on the spirit of the number one player in the world, because he was like, if Carlos Alcaraz is not going to be here, I am going to Carlos Alcaraz all over this court, serve like vintage 90s Pete Sampras, and win this Davis Cup if I have to do it by hook or by crook. And he almost did. He was so close. So for me, Team Spain really, really are the heart, or were the heart of this Davis Cup because of those reasons. And also their team captain, David Ferrer, who, I think if you're not knee deep in sort of tennis, news and all of that, I think you might not know any of this. But David Ferrer has been the team captain of Spain for a while now. And last year during the Davis Cup, that was Rafa Nadal's kind of retirement. That was his retirement ceremony before the whole French Open thing that happened this year. And it didn't go great. I think not everybody loved it. And I think I think it was front page news in the Spanish press of people not being really happy with David Ferrer. And then during this Davis Cup, there's been this whole hoopla about David Ferrer not bringing Alejandro David Fekina, who's the second highest ranked Spanish player, into the team this year. And so he's been dealing with a lot of stuff. And Nick, I don't know, do you know the Alejandro David Fekina story in this Davis Cup situation?
Well, we did talk about it before when he wasn't put in originally, even though Alcaraz, so they picked Alcaraz as the number one, and then he wasn't picked as number two.
Yeah.
And I remember him kind of kicking off about it. and not being happy that he wasn't picked and, things like that, and like being very public about it. I don't know if it's developed since.
It hasn't really developed since. That's basically the long and short of it. But I think a lot of people, or at least what I've been reading, is people still say, well, David Ferrer didn't pick Alejandro Davidic Fokina. And I'm like, Alejandro Davidic Fokina did not want to show up as a number 2, which Alejandro Davidic Fokina, I like you, my guy, but you're the number 2. That's just how it goes. And, I think David Ferrer really wanted to reward the players who got Spain through qualifying and make sure they had spots playing in this Davis Cup. So I think Spain and everything has really just gone way above what anyone thought they were going to do. And for me, that was I love an underdog story, and they were the underdogs, and they really did sort of go above what anyone thought they were going to do.
They are, I love the title that you've shared, because I didn't know about it, like the Davis Cup team of the people. I'm going to call it something else. I'm going to call it the Groundpass team, because they picked Groundpass players. They picked players outside the top 20 and go see on a Groundpass and be entertained by. How many times have we mentioned Jaume Munar this year?
So many times.
I think
we're basically the Jaume Munar podcast.
And I think it says something that about that the quality of these players, of any player, that they can still take their team. Because, like, say, we mentioned Czechia, and I was singing their praise of being such a strong team on paper, and Jaume Munar beating their number 1 player was a big deal. It's great to see, again, Davis Cup is the ultimate Groundpass tournament, because that's where these players really show up. Case in point, let's go back to what you were saying about Alejandro Davidovic Fokina. No, this is not meant to be a comment against him, but rather a compliment to Jaume Munar. I don't think Davidovic Fokina would have done better than Jaume Munar in that number 1 spot. I don't think he'd have won the matches that Munar didn't. I think Munar played well enough to, challenge. The only way you could have done better as having a number 1 pick for Spain was Carlos Alcaraz, and he got hurt, and that happens.
Yeah.
But all of these guys are quality. Pablo Carreño Busta's won a 1,000, for crying out loud. Like, he's 2-time Grand Slam semi-finalist, US Open, I think, both times. So yeah, wouldn't have done better. It's a strong underdog team, an underrated underdog team. Like, the ultimate feel-good final would have been Belgium-Spain, but we didn't get that because Italy is this all-conquering monolith.
Yeah. Yes, they are. Which brings us to our winners of this Davis Cup for the 3rd time in a row. Team Italy, without Jannik Sinner, led by Matteo Berrettini and Flavio Cobolli, have won the Davis Cup again. By the way, they're also, on the women's side, they hold the title for the Billie Jean King Cup. So I just want to talk about this a little bit in just sort of the dominance of Italian tennis right now, because they've taken over. They currently hold 2 Grand Slam titles in, Jannik Sinner, year-end finals, because he won the year-end finals, Billie Jean King Cup, Davis Cup. They have players falling out of the sky in Italy. I mean, they just have it going on right now. I think you could say they are the dominant tennis country at the moment.
I'm going to go further. They are the best tennis country in the world, and it's been clear for a while. They've kind of had this talent bubbling up coming through on the men's and the women's tour for a while, mainly the men's. Like, how many Italians are there in the top 100 right now? Because you've got Jannik Sinner, you've got Lorenzo Musetti, who is this close to winning a 1,000 if things fall his way. You've got Flavio Cobolli, who is an excellent player, an entertainer. He always shows up for Grand Slams. He's knocking on the door of top 20. He's going to do something. You've got Luciano Darderi, who keeps on picking up piece for fun and clay. You've got Matteo Arnaldi, who is super talented, can go deep in tournaments, particularly 1,000s. One of our favourites, Mattia Bellucci, is in there as well. Again, big entertainer. He's been we've interviewed him on the pod before, and I've just done 7 off the top of my head, and I know that there's more.
Yeah, and you didn't even mention Berrettini yet, or Sonego.
No. And that's that's the previous generation. Like, Berrettini's a Grand Slam finalist, like Wimbledon final from 4 years ago. Sonego, occasionally has a big run at a tournament. Had a couple of them this year. Then we get to the women. You got Jasmine Paolini, who won Rome, by the way, this year. And then, you mentioned 2 Grand Slams with Jannik Sinner, 3 if you count the fact that Arani and Paolini won Roland Garros this year. They're also the defending Olympic champions and will be until 2028.
Yeah.
Italy keeps producing these amazing players. They've got such a good tennis program that puts other countries to shame. Like, the closest we could probably get to them is Spain to a certain extent, because you've got Alcaraz at the top and there's a lot of really good Spanish players, as we just talked about, plus more to come with Martin Landalucci coming through on the men's side. Women's side, similar story. You've got Spanish players like Badosa, Sorribes Tormo, Buxa, a few others in there. Like, they're pretty good. They will keep churning stuff out. The Czechs as well. Like, they are the only others countries I can think off the top of my head that consistently turn out strong players. But Italy's is kind of come a bit out of nowhere, and I think their depth from top to bottom is impressive. And I genuinely cannot see any tournament, again, particularly on the ATP tour, which is relevant to Davis Cup, where even like, you go down to the Challenger Tour, it's rare not to see an Italian in the final.
Yeah.
That's I think where we're at, is that, Italy is the country to beat. And I think the fact it's now in Bologna is going to make that even harder. Everyone's going to be hoping that the Spanish can wheel out Alcaraz, because, let me tell you, like, a Sincaraz Davis Cup final would probably get a lot of attention.
It would definitely get a lot of attention. I will throw in Team USA there, because I feel like throughout this season, we've always remarked about how many, especially on the WTA, how many female, players are in the top 100. And there are tons of players on the American side on the ATP. They're in the top 100 as well. But they're not having that same success that Team Italy's having. A lot of countries are not having that same success that Italy's having. Look at France. France has tons of players as well. Like, these are big tennis countries with a bunch of representation, but no one is having that sort of consistency that Italy is having. I think we've talked about this before, that Italy just has such a strong grassroots, small tournament culture, where there are tons of challengers in Italy that all these players can kind of develop their skills at. And there's just a lot of support from their federation as well. We saw Tara Grant, who used to play for America, found her way. Now she plays for Team Italy, which obviously is where one of her parents is from, but she could have stayed, playing for Team USA, but she moved over and probably is getting a ton of support from Team Italy. I think definitely a lot of countries, especially Team USA, need to look at what Italy is doing with their tennis federation and these tournaments that they have that seems to produce excellent tennis players who not only do well individually, but then sort of go above and beyond for their players. Because like you said, it's hard to pick an MVP, but one of the names that you would probably put in there is Flavio Cobolli. If Jannik Sinner or Lorenzo Musetti decided to play Davis Cup this year, Flavio Cobolli would probably not be close to seeing a match. He would be on the bench cheering. But he was put into this position because, first of all, Lorenzo Musetti pulled out late. Jannik Sinner pulled out way before, so they knew about that. But then he was thrown into this position pretty much last minute, because Berrettini was always going to be the number one after Musetti pulled out. And yet he just exceeded. He became a different person at Davis Cup. I hope for his sake he carries on this tennis till next year, because it's beautiful tennis. It's gorgeous. And Flavio Cobolli is always one of those players that I've always loved. When he plays well, he has this great energy, and he'd be like a great addition to the top of the game. But I just haven't seen him play as well as he did in this week. And I think it was just because of Davis Cup. I really do think it was his love for playing for his country that got him to that level. So that was Davis Cup. I suggest, qualifiers are going to start soon. Well, soon, in a few months. Next year, they'll start qualifiers for next year's Davis Cup. Pay attention to it if you can. It is always a good time to see these players fight to get to the finals of the Davis Cup. And then we'll see who gets to the finals of the Davis Cup next year. Team Italy is already in, because not only are they defending champions, but they're also the host nation. And the host nation always gets in automatically into the finals. So we will definitely be seeing them at the Davis Cup Now, on to some other things that have been going on this week, because that is tennis and there's always stuff happening around. It is kind of the start of the off season. But in relation to the Davis Cup, did you see this photo, Nick? Because this photo broke the interwebs.
No, Anastasia, I did not. I'm probably going to need you to flash it up on screen.
You did not see this? Okay.
Okay, it is again, I
While
say this in a lot of episodes, I haven't been on social media in like a week.
Nick is like what we all want to be, who just is like, you know what? I'm not going to be online today. I'm just not going to do it. But as I pull up this photo to show Nick,
Live
Carlos
reaction.
Alcaraz, exactly. Carlos Alcaraz, who obviously could not be at the Davis Cup because he was injured. And by the way, I thought it was really cool that he went all the way there to actually try. He did the sort of pre-tournament, interviews and all of that. Well, he couldn't attend, which was a shame, but he was watching. He was watching the Davis Cup. Let me show you. I cannot believe you have not seen this photo. Nick, have you not seen this photo of Carlos Alcaraz watching the Davis Cup from home? From his parents' living room, by the way, because he still lives with his parents. And this photo broke the internet because I think there's just so much happening in this photo that people could not kind of get their heads around, which is interesting, I think, Nick, because if you watched the Carlos Alcaraz documentary, you know he lives with his parents. So I actually think they showed this living room in that documentary series, but I think people were more sort of like taken by the trophies that
Yes,
are
I have noticed those just casually sat there.
casually, just, I don't
They're
know,
like,
just
it's like the school trophies that you win, like your high school sports day or whatever. Like, oh look, my son won this thing at like or this local track meet, and oh look, yeah, that's just the US Open
oh,
trophy.
just the US Open, and Wimbledon trophies, just casually also also there as well on an IKEA shelf.
I love the humility here of Carlos. That like, I think what a lot of people, I think a lot of the reaction would have come from because I'm sat here going, yeah, that's just a nice living room, but you're right, like it's not the living room of someone you would expect to be super highly successful,
Yeah.
especially when you consider the like, oh wait, he still lives with his parents. Like, I don't know about you, Anastasia. If I had somehow won the prize money that Carlos Alcaraz had, and I lived with my parents, I would not still be living with my parents.
I would
Um,
not still be living with my parents. No way would I still be doing that. I'd be like, I'm getting my house. I would be like Coco Gauff, who,
yeah.
when she won the US Open that year, like, I think it was like during the off season, she was like, I have a house now. And I'm like, yes, you do.
Yes, you do.
Yes, yes, you do.
Carlos does not. Carlos is just casually resting his trophies on his parents' like furniture, and like I'm sure they're super proud. But I now have this vision one day of like I'm just not going to do this because like they're super proud of their son's achievements. It's like, so when are you going to move out? Because your stuff is now clustering everything. Like the more Grand Slams he's going to win, the more space they're going to try and find for all these replica trophies that he has, and they're increasingly going to take over the house. And it's going to be like, so Carlos, like, where you need to keep these in your room. Like they're like we do not have the physical space for this. Either you move out or you stop winning.
Which he's not going to stop winning. So it's like, you got to get your own house.
Like, can you imagine his parents build an extension just so they could put his trophies in?
Or that too. But it's so funny. If anyone can find the ATP runner up plate in that photo, let me know. Because it took me a while, but I finally found it. And I was like, oh my goodness, he literally has every single trophy he's ever won just there. You just have to like pick them out and find where he's put all of them. But no, that was really, really hilarious. I think it's
By
one
the
of
way,
his most liked, like, I think there's a journalist who usually follows Carlos around. He's a Spanish journalist, and he posted like a side by side of Carlos's post after winning the Roland Garros, and then that post. And I think it was like the difference between like 4 million likes and like 9 million, like not likes but views or something. Like it was just ridiculous. It was just people preferred to just look at his living room and his trophies.
Wow.
Oh
I mean, like,
man.
it gives you an insight into the real personality in play, and that's what we like, is like we want to know what the real person is like and not just admire them for their success. So yeah, that does give a bit of an insight.
This one on maybe a bit of a serious note, but Arthur Fils obviously has been away for a long time. We remember he got injured at Roland Garros while he was playing, actually, when he won his match against Jaume Munar. And he tried to come back during the Canadian Open, but then said it was too early. But recently, an article came out with a French journalist, and it was a bit of a sad news. And it's something that I think about all the time in general when it comes to athletes, especially someone being a Rafa Nadal fan who had to watch him play through pain all the time. Does anyone remember when, I think it was Wimbledon, and he was injured and his parents and siblings were telling him to like retire and get off court, and he was like, nope, just keep playing. And I have this thing about players playing through pain, and it's, in some places people are like, oh, that was brave, and that, they really, hung in there, and like, they either won the match or, mostly it's like they win the match and everyone's so like, oh my god, they did it through all this pain. Or with Nadal, and they're like, he numbed his foot, and I'm like, oh my god, that's great. Did he have to numb his foot to play tennis? But okay. But basically the news is, Arthur Fils has had this back problem for a while since he was a child, but basically that his back issue that he's currently dealing with now is actually a lot more serious than was previously thought, and that he had actually been told to not play Roland Garros because the back issue had started during, I think it was Barcelona that they were saying, but he just sort of like kept playing through it, and he kind of felt a bit good during Roland Garros. And obviously being a French player who never at the time won at Roland Garros before, feeling that pressure to sort of like play, and then he did, and then he hurt his back and he hasn't played really since. And I wanted to contrast that, Nick, with what we just recently heard about Joel Salisbury. I think I talked about it a little bit in the last episode, but basically he's taking some time off from tennis because he's, I was talking about how one of my favorite teams to pair up this year were Joe Salisbury and Neil Skupski, but Neil Skupski is going to be playing with Chris Harrison next year. And we finally got the full reason as to why, because Joel Salisbury is going to be taking basically the beginning of the year off. He won't be playing probably till Clay is right now what he's saying, because he's just been having anxiety attacks and he just has not been happy playing and is just going to be taking some time off. And the reason I wanted to contrast those two stories is because I think this is something that's going to start coming up a lot with players, especially with players talking about the season being too long and all of this stuff. And it's sort of the balance between realizing when you need to stop and just sort of heal, get better, and all of that stuff. See Carlos Alcaraz pulling out a Davis Cup, or just sticking with it and playing through pain because I don't know. What do you think of all those things? As a Rafa Nadal fan, I always hated it. Every time they were like, he numbed his foot or he played through an ab tear. I'm like, that's not great.
I mean, that's what killed his career in the end. Like,
Yeah.
fundamentally, like, he eventually did that one too many times, and that was that Wimbledon match you were talking about against Taylor Fritz. Because, yeah, if he hadn't played through, we would have got Fritz Kyrgios in the semis, and then who knows whether it would have been a Djokovic Fritz or Djokovic Kyrgios final that year. But we don't do what ifs here. So, what do I think about this? It's complicated. Do I? I think a lot of this comes from the culture. A lot of how you see this is going to come from the culture that you're come from. Like a more European mindset would probably say that that's acceptable to take some time off for whatever he needs, be it physical or mental health. So you think with the physical problems that Fils has been having, he needs to think about his career. Obviously, he felt good at Roland Garros. And look, if we were talking about an American player going to the US Open, we'd want them to play. We'd be pushing for them to play. We'd be saying it was a disaster if they didn't. It'd be a similar thing for a British player at Wimbledon. Like the press would be absolutely like, can't believe they're not. Well, they were a bit kinder to Andy Murray in the later years because he was kind of like, thank you for your service kind of thing. So there's that sort of like, there's a desire from the player to be able to compete because this is their life, this is their job, and this is their passion as well. Like they love the sport. And then I'm thinking about in terms of like you and I, Anastasia, like we have jobs, but if one of us had a major physical injury or were dealing with regular anxiety attacks, could we take time off from our jobs to go and deal with that? That's probably going to depend on the countries that we live in. In my case, in the UK, yes. You in the US, probably not.
Definitely not.
Definitely not. Definitely for the anxiety attacks, not. The physical thing depends.
Probably, yeah. Yeah, it
Depends on the
depends. It
injury.
depends. But I get what you're saying.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
it's a good thing. So I think it's going to come from the mindset. Like our more European listeners are going to be like, yeah, take some time off. You need that time off. Our American listeners, or maybe even our Asian listeners, or whoever, are going to come at it from the perspective of that's just life. You work through it. It's your job. Go do it. And if you like, these guys do a physical job, like we don't. Like, I guess if you work construction or something like that, like, do you carry on through a back injury? So there's a limit of sympathy from some. There could be a limit of sympathy and like, well, I would still have to go to work, or I need to work. Like you're earning a lot of money, you could just
Yeah.
you have the luxury of doing that. And I'm like, yeah, you have the luxury of doing that, but also we want these guys to have as long. I think you also in a sport you have to take a decision to make your career as long as possible. And we who don't work in sports, who maybe like say you do work in construction or manufacturing or anything else like that, there isn't that thought of, well, actually, if I go and rest, then I can work for longer. I take a break now and
Yeah.
not work. That culture doesn't really exist, and maybe it should. So it's complicated. I think of all these big picture things in the middle of it. At the end of the day, they're humans. If they can take the time off because that is the industry they work in that allows them to, I don't resent them having that, and I think they should make the uses of it. But at the end of the day, it's their decision, and they have to make the choice depending on their own body and mindset. Joe Salisbury doesn't feel like he can right now, which is fine. And Artur Fils decided that, oh, my back's fine. I can carry on. Like you were saying that he felt better at Roland Garros. He probably wouldn't have played if it got worse during like Madrid and Rome and to the point where it was like, I can't play. He wouldn't have played.
Yeah.
Thought he could.
Yeah.
He made an assessment. It ended up being the wrong assessment. So let's not be too critical about him doing that. So that's where I say at the end of the day, these players have to assess what the best thing is for their careers in the short and the long term. And sometimes they get it right, sometimes they get it wrong, and we won't find out which it is until long after next year. So I think that's where we'll land on that.
Yeah, it's definitely a tricky one, and you're right. It kind of all depends on how you look at it and how you see things. Let us know in the comments, like, what do you think? Because it's something I always think about when I see things like this with some players deciding to step away and then other players just just going ham and going for it. So, but yeah, speaking of Rafa Nadal, he's back. We're winning, Roland Garros 2026. It's happening. I see it now. It's a vision. He's coming back.
40-year-old Rafael Nadal winning Roland Garros.
It's his court, it just is his thing. But if you haven't seen it yet, he posted a video of him training with Alex Ayala because she is, she's part of the Rafa Nadal Academy. And he posted in the caption that he has not touched a racket in a year. Like, he has not played tennis in a year, which I thought, wow, that is crazy. But you're right. Like, he put his body through so much. I'm sure once it was time to just stop, I think he just kind of did a full stop a bit. But for someone who hadn't touched a racket in a year, Rafa, looking good. Let's think about it. Let's think about Roland Garros 2026. It's just one tournament. We have half the year to train, and we could come back and make it 15. You know what I mean? 15 is a nice round number.
You sound like the Lewis Hamilton fans waiting for him to win his 8th Formula One World Championship in 2026 at 41. Which you could. It's Nick, a bit more realistic, I would say.
Nick, that is for other podcasts.
Oh, yeah, it's the other podcast. Yeah, sorry. Okay, I will say something more relevant then. Wonder when the last time Roger Federer touched a racket was.
Ooh. You know what? I think actually what's happening is that they're just training for, their comeback tour. But maybe they can start the comeback tour when Roger is inducted into the Hall of Fame. And you know who's going to be there? I'm going to be there. I don't know how yet, guys. I have no idea. But Roger Federer was inducted into the Hall of Fame. He was voted in. The ceremony is going to be next year before the U.S. Open at the Newport at the Newport Museum, Rhode Island, where that tournament is held. Tennis Hall of Fame, that's the name. But yeah, I think that's like really, really cool. It's his first try too. He got in on the first try. Of course he did. Of course Roger got in on the first try. But I think that's really cool. He's going to be in the Hall of Fame. And that's actually a really cool museum. I had never been until this year. And I didn't even know what to expect, but it's actually really cool. You get to see all their like old kits, and there's a whole kind of display for the Hall of Fame. And it's like, it's a really cool venue. If you've never been to the Tennis Hall of Fame in Newport, Rhode Island, definitely add it to your list of places to go next year, especially during the Newport Open. That would be a great time to go so you can watch some tennis and go to the museum at the same time. And in terms of the induction, I don't know how. I think everyone's going to be wanting to go there. So we'll see what that's going to be like, but it's exciting.
I mean, when I saw this news, I was like, he wasn't already? Like, it was like one of those, oh yeah, I forgot you have to officially be inducted. I thought it was an automatic qualification thing, and you would think after winning 20 Grand Slams, he'd just like, we're just going to put you in now. I know you're still
Yeah.
playing, but you may as well come in. But like, yeah, there's a process to these things. But that's really cool that like that's going to happen, and that's going to be probably one of the biggest inductions that they've ever had. Wait till Rafa gets his turn. Novak as well, in a couple of years when he eventually decides to stop. And like you were thinking about, you were saying this at the start, you're like, when I was looking at our rundown and then we were going to talk about this, I was like, oh yeah, going to the Hall of Fame Museum would be really, really cool. Like, I'd love to go there. I think I'd see like some interesting stuff. Like, you know, for those of you who maybe might find it a bit hard to get to Wimbledon, you can, it's like the meme of, you want to go to Wimbledon? Mom, can we go to Wimbledon? We have Wimbledon at home. Wimbledon at home is the Newport Challenger because it's a grass court tournament with an on-site museum and a lot of heritage. So, you know, that will do. By the way, the Wimbledon Museum is also really, really cool. You should check it out if you ever get a chance to go. The Hall of Fame has a bit more of a well-rounded look at tennis history, maybe a bit more of an American slant. I would definitely love to go and check that out one day as someone who really wants to get into tennis history and really enjoys looking at where our sport has come from. So, and the people, the greats involved. So that would be really, really cool. But yeah, go and check out Wimbledon at home when you can.
Yeah. And by the way, it's actually where the US Open was originally held before it moved to New York. So, yes, definitely a location. If you are into tennis and love tennis, definitely a location to visit in the States. Um, Before we get to our conclusion, we just have to mention I actually can't believe we haven't talked about this yet on Groundpass, which is so I just have probably forgotten to put it on the rundown. But if anyone has not been paying attention, Fabio Fognini, who retired this year at Wimbledon, his last match was against Carlos Alcaraz in that crazy, crazy match, is on Dancing with the Stars, the Italian version. And I have been living, I don't obviously don't have access to watch the show, but there are tons of clips online. If you follow Fabio Fognini on Instagram, he posts tons of clips of it. So he's gone really far in the tournament. So he's like towards the end, you know, he might win this whole thing, which would be crazy. That's his next title after retiring from tennis is Dancing with the Stars. But he's really good. He's like really, really good. I saw a clip of him today and he was doing all these sort of lifts and spins at the same time. And if you had any doubt that tennis players are the best athletes in the world, Fabio Fognini is your example that they are the best athletes in the world because they can transition seamlessly from holding a racket and being on Wimbledon, on the court, on center court of Wimbledon, to being on dance floor and spinning around and having like doing lifts and all these crazy things. I was thoroughly impressed. I was because I've watched Dancing with the Stars, and you know, a lot of the times the stars can be so awkward, you know, because they're just learning to dance for the first time, a lot of them. And Fabio looks like a pro. He looks really, really good, which is cool. Okay, Nick, we have come to the off season. It's time.
That probably ruined everyone's headphones. I'm sorry.
We did it. We made it to the
We
off
made it.
season.
Can I go on holiday now?
No, we don't get to go on
Oh,
holiday. We do not get to go to the Maldives. That's not the deal. We just have to do more things, Nick. Oh man, I wish we could go to the Maldives, but we are going to take Nick and I a bit of a break during this off season. We have recorded a few episodes already that they're in the bank, so we won't actually be recording. They'll just come to you in the feed. So for you, we will just be here weekly still. We're not going to disappear. We're just going to show up weekly. But Nick and I are definitely going to be taking a break because we'll be doing some stuff behind the scenes. We will be taking some time off from talking into a mic, which would be great. But yeah, so there are a few things coming up that just wanted to mention as we wrap up this episode. But one of them is Groundpass now has our very first gift guide. Yes, we are jumping on the gift guide trend. But I was thinking about this the other day. And maybe because I had been sort of inundated with gift guides, like I just kept, all these publications had gift guides and I was seeing them everywhere. And I thought, wouldn't it be cool to have a Groundpass gift guide that was specific to new tennis fans trying to get into the sport? It has everything from tennis tickets to some exclusive Groundpass merch. Stay tuned for that. Bagels, because what is tennis without bagels? It's not tennis, actually. Check out our Groundpass gift guide. By the time you are listening to this, it is already live on our website. I will leave a link in the show notes of this episode on YouTube, and then also on the podcast feeds as well. So you can just go check out our gift guide. I hope you enjoy it. And if you have a tennis fan in your life, or you're just buying for yourself, because I definitely encourage that, buy things for yourself as well, I will leave that all there for you. What else? Nick, it's also Thanksgiving week for us Americans. It's our Thanksgiving. So what more can we do than to give thanks to all ground passers? Thank you guys, obviously, for being with us, but we're going to have a special little thank you specifically for ground passers who have bought merch. So if you don't follow us on Instagram, this is the best time to follow us on Instagram because I will be posting every day a couple of ground passers and their tennis stories, just to say thank you, because we wouldn't really be anything without the people who listen to us chat about tennis, and we are very grateful for you guys. Last week, I did a mini pod by myself, and I mentioned at the end of the pod that we had 17 ratings on Apple Podcasts, and wouldn't it be cool to get to 20? And last time I checked, we were at 19, and someone left such a beautiful, beautiful note for us. I will post it up here if you're watching this on YouTube, because it was just so nice that they left that note for us. So thank you so much for rating us and just caring about listening to us and what we say. It means a lot. And if you have bought merch and you haven't contacted me yet, all you have to do is send me a photo of yourself in the merch and an answer to the question how you got into tennis or why you like tennis, and we will add you to our little thank you post that will be on Instagram. And I think we'll just keep it as a thing, because I think it's just one of those things where we can always, throughout the year, once in a while, just drop a little thank you to our ground passers, because you guys mean the world to us. What else, Nick? Oh, Nick, do you want to talk about our year-end review show and preview a little bit of what we're going to be doing?
it's going to be glitz. It's going to be glam. It is the Groundpass Awards. That is how we're going to celebrate the end of the tennis season. We're going to be highlighting all the great stories, as all great review shows should, as all awards shows should, particularly if it's for films, highlight great stories. And, we're going to have to figure out a way of narrowing down all the ones we think are best. So, yeah, we're going to be trying to pick out stories other than Sincaraz from the ATP Tour. We're going to be highlighting all the amazing new exciting talent that we've been seeing coming through on the WTA, American or otherwise. And of course, we will be celebrating doubles as well as singles in that podcast. Stay tuned. We have got some deliberating to do, and so do you.
Yes, yes, you do. So we want everyone to participate in this award show for sure. We're definitely going to have a category just for ground passers, which is going to be what was the tennis story of the year. We're going to, so what I'm going to do, we made a little sort of, if you follow us from last year, this is kind of an expansion of what we did last year. So after this episode goes live, I'm going to post a little photo of all the categories, but one of the categories there is going to be story of the year, and send in your thoughts, who you thought was the best player, the most improved, all of that stuff. And then from that category, we're going to whittle it down to the nominees, which the nominees are going to come from you. We're not going to pick them. So the nominees will come from you, and then we will, on our award show, from the list of nominees, pick what we think is the story of the year, which is pretty much what you pick because you're the one picking the nominees. So I think that's really exciting.
So yeah, the way it's going to work, just to make it very clear, if you're listening to the podcast and you're going, oh, that sounds really good, how can I get involved? So this podcast is going to go out on Monday, the 24th of November, 2025. I had to think about what year it was then. It's so close to the year end that my brain is half in 2026, and which is not good for the secret podcast. But yeah, so this podcast is going out on the 24th of November, 2025. We will be recording on the 30th of November, 2025. So you have less than a week to get it in, because once we start recording, which we will agree a time. We haven't agreed a time yet, so we're not going to necessarily tell you, like, do we want to give them a time of, like, what can you get this into us by this time on the 29th or the 30th of November?
Let's say by noon Eastern. I think that's just easier.
Yeah,
because we'll
noon Eastern
definitely,
works for me.
yeah.
Cool. So noon Eastern time, or that's 5 p.m. UK, or it's 6 p.m. in Europe. That's the time you have on the 30th of November to get your nominees in, and then we'll probably end up having a look at seeing what we can whittle these down to. And I'm looking forward to seeing what everyone says, and hopefully enough of you will say the same one several times that it will make it a lot easier.
Yes, yes. And I'm pretty sure people would think there were some pretty big stories that I think they'll rise to the top for sure. That came out of this year. So that's going to be our awards show. By the way, there's also going to be a fashion, style, and culture version as well, because that has become so many people, at least in real life that I meet, they're always like, oh my goodness, I really loved the fashion episode you did. So I think it's just something that people like. So we are also going to do a fashion version of the year in review. I'm going to be doing that hopefully with Jessica from Hardcourt, who has participated in a lot of those episodes. TBD, we'll see if I do it with her, but there'll be a special different post for that, and we will be in touch with you about what that is and the deadlines for that as well. Nick, another podcast in the can. We did it.
Yeah, we did it. Is it 2026 yet?
Soon. We're going to be talking about the United Cup very, very soon. Our favorite tournament. Right,
It's
Nick? Our favorite tournament?
so good.
Yes.
So good. Like, once we've had a couple of weeks off, not that you'll notice, but I am so excited for our awards show next week that we're going to be doing. Like, I have been thinking about it for weeks.
I'm really excited. Like when you came up with the idea of like the nominees things, I was like, oh my goodness, this is gonna be so fun.
Do
This
we
is
need to
gonna be
dress up for this?
so fun. It's an awards show.
TBD.
Let us know in the comments. Yes, TBD, but let us know. Do you want us to dress up for our tennis awards show? Hey, you don't show up to the Oscars in a sweatshirt. So we might be dressing up for this. Oh man, thank you guys for joining us for another episode of Groundpass. It is always so fun talking to you all. If you listen to us on a podcast player of your choice, please leave us a rating. Still trying to get to 20 on Apple Podcasts, so maybe you can be our 20th rating. Leave us a message. Love reading those too. If you're listening to this on YouTube, like and subscribe. And we will see you guys next week with another podcast. Bye, guys.
Bye.